In today's video, we're going to update our AI voice assistant from this to this. So let's get started. Hello, this is Marco speaking. Today we're going to update the front end for our AI voice assistant, giving some UI sparks to it and making it more, interesting to see. We're going to add an orb that slows down when the AI model starts speaking, which was inspired by this post that I saw on Instagram. And we're also going to add some audio volume bars, which shows the audio volume and the frequency in real time while our assistant is speaking, which was inspired by this voice change automatic project from GitHub. The combination of the orb and the audio dynamics will make our voice assistant to become more visually appealing and catch the attention of our audience. But before we proceed, if you like this kind of content, just give me a thumbs up, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so we can learn more about Node.js, React, and these AI integrations. And never forget that the more learn and practice you have, the better you become and more value you can provide. So let's do this. Okay, great. So this is what we developed previously. This is the current version of the AI voice assistant. So the front end is here with our avatar, which is pretty much an image, and the code is already running. This is the front end and this is the back end. One thing which is important to notice is the fact that I had to change this line here with the both3 client. Pretty much I had to pass the region. So since I'm using the US East 1, I pretty much had to pass the region name as US East 1. Otherwise the previous code failed to run. And that's pretty much it. This is the only change that we need to do on the backend side. Pretty much is going to be on the front end side, all the changes that we're going to do from this point to onwards. So let's keep going. So this is the front end. The first thing that we're going to do is to develop the orb, the sphere that keeps running with some animations. So let's do that. So let's go to our avatar, which is pretty much this image. And then we're going to remove this line and add some new components. So I'm going to return here a div. And inside the div, I'm going to add a canvas, an HTML component canvas. This is where the magic is going to happen. And then, after doing this, what else we're going to do? I'm going to create some new CSS classes to wrap this component. So here on the voice assistant module, I'm going to close this first. Okay, great. So here, what we're going to do, we're going to add some CSS classes to the component. So I'm going to click here into the voice assistant module and add some new classes to use into our new component. So the first class I'm going to add is a class for the wrapper, the assistant avatar wrapper. So let's go here, and then I'm gonna call it voice assistant avatar wrapper. This is the div that wraps the canvas. I'm gonna say that this is a display flex, align item center, justify content. It's going to be center as well. The height is going to be 50 virtual height, and the width is also going to be 50 virtual width. Perfect. This is what I defined for the wrapper. And here we need to import the styles and the CSS file, which is going to be this one. So the class name is going to be the styles into the new component that we just created. Copy here and paste it here. So now if you go back to the front end, there is nothing here. Let's keep going. Now let's create a class for the canvas. I'm gonna call it voice assistant avatar canvas. For now, I'm just going to do a background transparent and the border radius should be 50% because I want the orb to be around. Let's copy this, go back here and add the class name. Perfect. Now what we need to do, we need to create a custom hook to hold a logic to design and draw our canvas. It's going to be an animation which is going to run inside this canvas, and the code for the animation will be inside a custom hook for this component. So I'm going to create a use voice assistant avatar.ts, and then here we have the use voice assistant avatar component, and then we export as a default our use voice assistant avatar, which is our custom hook. Perfect. So to make it easy for us to manipulate the canvas in the JavaScript side, I'm going to create an ID here, which is going to be the orb ID. And then here, what we're going to do, we're going to import our use voice assistant avatar and the canvas orb ID. So the ID for this component is going to be the canvas orb ID, and here we're going to use our custom hook, use voice assistant avatar. That's pretty much it for now. Okay, great. So here on our use voice assistant avatar, let's create the functions to draw our orb. So the first function that I'm going to create is a function called load orb, which is pretty much this thing. For now, I'm gonna pass the variables as global variables. This is not React This is not React optimized code, but it's gonna work for now. So then we also need to define some constant values here. We have the canvas and the canvas size. For now, we don't need this. So we have this function to load the orb, and this is the code. Let me do something else here. I'm going to define the linter for VS Code, and then we do the settings.json. And here I'm going to define the editor format on save. It's going to be true, and the default formatted is going to be this one. I'm going to try to do the same here on the root for the project. VS Code settings.json, and then it's going to be pretty much the same thing. Perfect. Now we have a linter for our code. So here we are running a first function for designing our orb. So we get the orb canvas, which is this element here. Let me replace this here for our ID, and then we get the context for our canvas, and then with this define the width and the height for our canvas, and then we fill a rectangle with this size, and then we do the first calculations for drawing some points on the screen. This is the first function. In order to see the canvas updating in real time as an animation, we need to use the request animation frame from JavaScript. For drawing animations on JavaScript, we need to use this function, request animation frame. Let me change this to English. So we need to use this function. This is the main function for JavaScript applications for drawing animations. So we're going to use this here in a few minutes. So the second function that we're going to define is a function for animating our orb. So I'm gonna call it animate orb. So I'm gonna call it here. And now let's define the code for our animating our orb. Before this, I'm also going to define two states for our orb. So if you remember the demonstration, I don't know if it was clear enough, but we're gonna have pretty much two states. The first state is when there is no audio playing, and the second one is when there is an audio playing. When an audio is playing, we can see the orb rotating in a higher speed, and when an audio is playing, the orb is going to slow down a little bit. The code is going to be pretty much the same. The parameters will change. So I'm going to define here an interface which defines the parameters for the animation for the orb. So this is the interface that defines the orb controls. So we have the rotation speed, sphere size scale, which controls the sphere, the entire sphere size. We have another parameter which defines the layers count, and we have the depth outer layer, which defines how big it is, the outer layer. In my case, I define all of these as parameters, but you can change these and play around these numbers to see what you like the most. But in our case, we're not gonna change many of these parameters. So this is going to be the two states that we have. When we have the audio playing state and we have the audio waiting state. As you can see here, the sphere size scale, the layers count, and the depth outer layer is going to be the same. The only thing that we're going to change there is the rotation speed. When the audio is playing, when our assistant is saying something, we're going to slow down the orb a little bit. And that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to pass some variables here as React parameters. So this state is going to be defined as some React parameters. I'm not going to use a use state, I'm going to use a ref because I don't need anything else to listen to the changes of this state. So I'm going to pass this as a ref rather than a use state. And let's define the code for our orb, for the animation for the orb. This is the first step, the context. We need to pass some parameters for designing the style and the composition. I'm going to attach some links in the description for you to read more about Canvas, HTML Canvas. Let's keep going. And then here we're going to destructure our state. This is our orb controls, the one that we defined here. So we're going to extract the parameters from here, from the orb controls. This is going to be the first four to draw the elements on the screen. We also need to define a counter. So the counter is going to be another use ref. The counter is required to draw the sphere in different positions of the screen. So the more the counter changes, it's going to animate the orb in different positions. So as more as the canvas keeps running, the count will change to show the orb in different states of the rotation. So this is why we need the count. Perfect. For now, don't worry about this. The code is broken, but we're gonna fix it. There's some code missing here. That's it. Add it here. Now we need to add a shift value. This is for shifting the orb as the canvas changes, the size. So this code can be a bit intimidating. So I recommend to you to play around and change these numbers to see what each one of these do. So I did not create this thing from scratch. I found this on the internet, and then I'm trying to adapt it for our experiment. But in order to understand what everything do, if you want to see what everything do, I highly recommend to you to play around these values and see what they do. Now we need to increase the counter for drawing the next state. Then we need to call the request animation frame, pointing to the same function, request animation frame, and then we animate the orb, passing the function to animate the orb. And that's pretty much it. This is the code to draw the orb. It can be a bit intimidating, a lot of these mathematical operations. There is sines and cosines here, so if you want to see what everything do, try to tweak the values and see what they do with your orb. For now, there will be nothing here on the screen because we still need to call the initial function, which is the load orb. So what we're going to do, the first thing that we're going to do is to use a use effect that we already imported here for the first call. So when we first start this use voice assistant avatar, we're going to call this load orb, which is going to draw the first parameters, the first elements for the orb. It will be defined here, and then we're going to call the animate orb function. And the animate orb function will draw the orb into one position, into one state. We're going to extract some parameters here that define some elements, some parameters for the orb, like the rotation speed. And these numbers will be used as parameters to design the orb in the current state. And then we're going to increase the counter to draw the orb the next state. So as the orb keeps rotating, we're going to increase this number to draw the orb in different positions of the rotation. And then here at the end, we call the request animation frame from JavaScript, passing the animate orb function. So this function will be called like endlessly to draw the orb. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to do this here and then refresh it. And that's pretty much it. We can see that now we have the orb, but we need to center it in the screen. This is our orb. Look how beautiful this thing is. But we still need to do some tweaks and center the element on the screen. So there is one error in our CSS. Instead of using justify self, it's going to be justify content. So now when you go back, we can see that the orb is centered on the screen. Perfect. Let's keep going. So the next thing that we're going to do is to update our voice assistant avatar to receive some parameters. We're going to receive audio file URL to detect when the audio is playing. So I'm going to pass them here actually. Export interface is going to be the use voice assistant avatar props. So we need to pass the audio file URL, which is an optional string. Perfect. So I'm going to structure them here. And then we pass the audio file URL. Perfect. What we're going to do, we're going to define a second use effect. Here. So when the audio file exists, so this use effect will listen to the audio file changes. When the audio file exists, we're going to pass the orb controls as the audio playing state. When the orb controls does not exist, we're going to change the state as the audio waiting state. Perfect. Now let's update this component here. Let's import the new interface here as well, and then we're going to use it here. And then we pass the props here. Perfect. Let's keep going. Okay, great. Now that we have the orb, let's update the parent component to pass what we need to pass to the voice assistant avatar. So I'm gonna search for the references to see where we use the voice assistant avatar, and here we're gonna pass the audio file URL, which is the last AI reply URL. Okay, perfect. Now we're passing the last AI reply URL to the voice assistant avatar. So here on the custom hook, whenever this URL changes, it's going to trigger our use effect, and the use effect will update the orb controls to a different state based on the fact whether the audio file URL exists or not. Okay, great. Let's make an experiment. So let's go back to the front end. So this is our front end. Let's refresh the page. So let's see this in action. Hello, who are you?
Hello. I am an AI created by OpenAI, a company that specializes in artificial intelligence research. My purpose is to assist and communicate with users like yourself. How can I help you today?
Perfect. As you can see, when the AI model is speaking, the orb gets a little bit slower, so it goes to a different state when the audio is playing. Perfect. Now let's work on the audio visualization bars. Let's go back to the code. And here, what we're going to do, we're going to create a new component. So I'm going to create it here. I'm going to call it audio bars visualizer. This is going to be the new component .tsx. This is the component audio bars visualizer. For now, it's just going to return null, and we're going to export this as the default component. And here we're going to import it audio bars visualizer. Perfect. So let's start working on our audio bars visualizer. So I'm going to click here. The structure will be pretty much similar to what we did before for the orb. We're going to return a canvas. Perfect. Besides the canvas, we're also going to create a custom hook, which is going to be the use audio bars visualizer.ts. Perfect. So here we're going to do the same, use audio bars visualizer. Use an arrow function, and then we export it here as the default export. Use audio bars visualizer. Perfect. So let's create an interface here, which is going to be the properties that we're going to pass to this custom hook, which is going to be export interface this.props. But we change the first letter here to be uppercase, and then we destruct it here. What we need to pass here to this custom hook, we basically need to pass the same URL that we passed to the orb. So here we're gonna pass the same audio file URL. as an optional string. Perfect. And then we extract it here. So here on the auto bars visualizer, we're going to import the custom hook and the interface. And then here we're going to pass the same property. Use auto bars visualizer props, and then we use the custom hook here. Use auto bars visualizer. Let's return it here. Null for now. And then here we pass the props. Perfect. Actually, let me do something else here. We're going to extract the URL here. And if the URL is not defined, we're going to return null from this component. So since we had to manipulate the canvas on the JavaScript side for the orb, we're going to do the same here for the auto bars visualizer. So I'm going to create here an ID, and then here with this ID we're going to import it on our component. So we're going to import it here, and we're going to pass it. We're going to pass the ID to the canvas. Perfect. Let's keep going. So I'm going back to the CSS file, and I'm going to define a class for the canvas here as well. Same way that we did for the other one. So we're going to import the styles here. And on this voice assistant module, let's create a class for our canvas element. So I'm going to create it, the voice assistant audio visualizer canvas. Okay, perfect. So the style is going to be 100% width. For the height, I'm going to pass 400 pixels. The background is going to be gray. The position is going to be absolute. And the Z index is going to be 0. Okay, great. Now that we define here the CSS class, let's go back to the auto bars visualizer and pass it here, which is going to be pretty much this. So the class name is going to be the styles in our new CSS class. Perfect. Now let's start working in our element. Okay, perfect. Now here, what we're going to do, let's start working our audio bars visualizer. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is to import use effect from React. Use effect. Perfect. And what we're going to do here, we're going to define a use effect that listens to the audio file URL. Use effect. Whenever the audio file URL changes, this function is going to be triggered. So if the audio file URL exists, we're pretty much going to call our function to draw the audio bars on the screen. So it's going to be an async arrow function like this, and then we're going to call it here init. Perfect. So one of the major libraries that we're going to use here, it's the audio context from JavaScript. So this is a library responsible to extract audio information, and then we can manipulate this information the way we want. So this is going to be one of the major libraries for manipulating the audio information and draw them as bars on the screen. Perfect. So here I need to define a function to extract the audio context from the browser. And it's going to be pretty much like this. Get audio context. Perfect. Now let's define an instance here from the audio context. Let's define a source variable. So here what we need to do. So here on this line, if you remember well, when we start playing the audio in our visualizer, we have an audio player here, pretty much here on the bottom, which is the audio player to play the audio from the AI model. So we need to extract that audio player and read the information from it. To do this, we need to go back to the audio player element and assign an ID to it. So we can query here on this side of the code. So let's go back here to the voice assistant component. Let's go to the audio player. And what we need to do, we need to define an ID here for the audio element. And then we assign the ID here. And then on the other side of the code, we query the element by ID, by this ID that we just created. Perfect. If we could not read this element, then we stop the function. The next thing that we do is to define the source variable as the audio element that we just queried from the HTML tree. So here, what we are doing, we created here the audio context variable, and then we create a media source from the HTML element. So when we have the audio element on the screen, we're going to read it and extract the information from it to draw the bars on the screen. Perfect. Let's keep going. Let's define some extra parameters to the analyzer, to the data analyzer. Here we need to pass some constants, which are these ones. I highly recommend you to tweak these values and see what each one of them do to increase your understanding for the code. So basically we are defining the maximum decibels, the minimal decibels, the smoothing time constant. You will see that we're gonna have some bars drawn on the screen, and the bigger this number, the smoother it gets to transition from one height to another. So as the audio keeps playing, the bigger this number, the more time it takes for switching from one state to another. And the smaller the number is gonna be faster, but it's less visually appealing to the user. And this number determines how many bars we're gonna have on the screen. Perfect. Let's keep going. The next thing that we do is to read the canvas that we just created. So this is the audio bars canvas ID. So we're gonna read it. This is the element that we just created, this one. And we need it here on the code. And again, if the canvas does not exist, we just stop the execution. After this, we need to define a canvas context, which is a 2D context. The next thing that we do is to define the canvas width. I had to pass this because when I was making some experiments, if I don't pass the canvas width to be the same as the window inner width, it's gonna be blurry and it looks like a low resolution element. So this fixed the low resolution element, the low resolution problem in the canvas. Perfect. After this, we call another function which is going to be called visualize. Then we call this visualize function. Perfect. So here we are defining the canvas and the data source to extract the information and draw the bars on the screen. Now let's define the initial function to actually draw the bars on the screen. So the first thing that we do is to check if the canvas and the canvas context exist. If not, we stop the execution. Then we extract the width and the height from the canvas. pass this information, fast forward the size. The buffer length. And then we instantiate the array, which is going to be populated with the frequency information. For now, it's just an uint8 array. We clear the basic context. And we define another function to actually draw the bars. Need to check if here inside this new function, we need to check if the source exists. If not, we stop the execution again. Then we connect the data to the source. We call the request animation frame to this function. So this is the same function as we used previously to draw the orb. Now we populate the array that we created previously. This array we populated with the data that we have, the bars, the frequency, and the decibels for each frequency. Now we define the basic style for the background for the canvas. We define the bar width and the bar height. And then we do the for loop for drawing the bars. Perfect. Now we need to define this map function. Let me remove this. So what is this map function? And what we are doing here in this for loop. So this for loop is basically reading each frequency for the buffer array data, and then we extract the bar height. And what I want to do here is basically to map the height to a color value. So here we are using the HSL color scheme. And if we check it here, HSL color, and we go here, if you check the code, you will see that the second value is 100% and the third is 50, and the first value is actually dynamic from this function. So if you go here, we put 150, you will see that this number changes the entire color. So what I want to do is I want shorter bars to be green and taller bars to be more red and orange. So if you look at this number, you will see that green, it tends to be the greeny colors are bigger. The number here is bigger compared to the orange and the red. So what I'm doing here, I'm passing the bar height, and I'm passing the minimum value and the maximum value for the height, and we are passing the 120 as the minimum value and the 30 as the maximum value. So what I want to do is, the taller the bar, the smaller the number. The shorter the bar, the bigger the number. So it's actually opposite. It's because it's growing from right to left. You will see here, I'm actually growing to this side. The taller the number, it's actually going to be closer to the left. So this function is responsible to read these numbers and to generate the hue value that we're going to pass here. And then we pass this HSL value to the hue, and then we pass to the fill style and to the context canvas. Perfect. And then we just call the draw function that we just created here. So here we have this visualize function, which was called here, and the visualize would define some extra values. We define the draw function, and here at the end we actually call the draw function, and inside the function we request the animation frame to call the same function to keep drawing the bars in real time. So let's recap everything. So we have the custom hook with the auto file URL, which is an optional string, and then we listen the optional value here into this use effect. If the value exists, we call the init function. We define the here in the init function, we define the audio context, the source. We read the audio player here. If it does not exist, we stop the execution. We define the source to read the data from the audio player. We pass some constants to the audio analyzer, which will analyze the audio information. We query the canvas that we just created here. If it does not exist, we stop the execution. We create a canvas context. We pass the width attribute to prevent having blurry bars on the screen. Then we call the visualize function. The visualize function check if the canvas and the canvas context exist. We extract the width and the height for the canvas. We set this information, which determines how many bars we're gonna have on the screen. We extract the buffer length, and then we pass the buffer length to this array, which is gonna be used to be populated from the actual audio data. We clear the basic canvas. We define the function to actually draw the bars, and then we call this function here. Inside this function, we connect the source to the analyzer, and then we call the request animation frame to be calling this function in a loop. We extract the data, and then we populate the array that we previously created. We set the canvas style into these three calls here. We define the bar width and a function for the bar height. And then we start reading the array and drawing the bars. Here we define the color for every bar. And then we actually draw the bar. And then we increment this value for drawing the next bar. And that's pretty much it. Let's see if everything is working. Okay, great. Let's test our new AI voice assistant. I'm gonna click here. Hello, who are you?
Hello, I am an AI assistant created by OpenAI. My purpose is to provide helpful and informative responses to any questions or inquiries you may have. How can I assist you today?
Okay, so it's not working. Let's see why. Oh, okay, I know why. So we need to pass here the same information, the audio file URL. So I'm going to extract it here from the props. Audio file URL, and then we pass it here to the audio bars visualizer. Perfect. Let's try again. Hello, who are you?
Hello, I am an AI assistant created by OpenAI. My purpose is to provide helpful and informative responses to any questions or inquiries you may have. How can I assist you today?
It's almost there, but as you can see, the bars are covering the orb, which is not what we want. Okay, great. So to prevent the orb to be hidden, what we need to do, we pretty much need to change the Z index for it. So the Z index for the canvas needs to be bigger than the auto bars visualizer. So since this one is 0, I'm gonna pass like 1 or 2. So this is the orb, this is the auto bars visualizer. So the Z index here needs to be bigger than this value. Let's try again. Hello, who are you?
Hello, I am an AI assistant created by OpenAI. My purpose is to provide helpful and informative responses to any questions or inquiries you may have. How can I assist you today?
And that's it. Now our new AI voice assistant is working with the orb and the dynamic auto bars visualizer. Now you have a more flashy AI voice assistant front end with a more appealing user experience. I hope you liked it, and I see you in the next time.